I saw the humanity in them, and I saw the options or lack of options, and I saw the possibility in them. So I left high school and went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and got really active on campus. Helped run a Black radio station called the Black House, but it was the Bruce Nesbitt African American Cultural Center.
Sure.
I have a lot of great memories and a lot of love on Nevada Avenue. And kicking it at the Black House and spending time in La Casa with my Latinx homies. So I spent a great deal of time working at U of I, building my education, but also just doing activism and support, and doing radio, being a radio host and running a radio station, throwing parties. Helped found a Christian fraternity on campus, or at least that chapter of a Christian fraternity on campus, and just built a really loving, supportive ecosystem of friends and family from my experience at U of I. It gave me some great things, some great gifts. At the end of my time at U of I was doing community work. I was working at a program called the Juvenile Upward Mobility Program, and I also was working in the city in juvenile justice as a mentor, and actually as an officer at the juvenile justice facility in Champaign. And I had a buddy give me a call, and he's like, "Hey, I know you're looking to do a move in your work. I have a perfect opportunity for you to be an educator here in Chicago." And so he sold me on making a pivot from just wanting to go to law school to using the tools that I'd already developed as a youth advocate, as a high school dean. It was a technical school with the Perspectives Charter Network here in Chicago, building on 81st and May. And I talked to that sister, Miss Jackson, and we had a remarkable conversation. I actually thought that when she heard my radical thoughts and the way I felt about how children should be supported, that she was like, "Oh, you're not the person for the job." And she actually said, you're perfect for it. And that she would give me the information I need to know about how to catch me up from the educational side. So she became my first education mentor, and she helped me translate my youth advocacy work and my support for youth into being a high school administrator. I was at that school for 5 years. I left that school. I worked at another school here on the South Side. It was Ace Technical Charter. Worked there for several years, and then I finished my time in the schoolhouse at a school in North Lawndale called DRW College Prep, and it's a school in the Noble Network. That's how I got into education. I got there unknowing. I didn't know that I would have a career in education.
Did you see yourself in some of these young kids you were as a dean of discipline? Did you see?
Yeah. I had to, but I had to do so in a way that relinquished control. Sometimes when we see ourselves and others, we want to dictate what success looks like to them. And so I saw the humanity in them, and I saw the options or lack of options, and I saw the possibility in them. And so that would I had to find a way of engaging with them that would affirm their identity and that would center in their humanity. And so often, those of us that are in education, it's uncomfortable truth, but systems that were built, in this country have really been about commodifying people and dehumanizing them, right? And so there is a thing that happens in our educational systems where our educational systems, many times, they dehumanize the youth that they say they serve, and they do so through this sifting system, right? So they'll sift based on morality. So you'll hear educators say, "Oh, that's a good kid," or "That's a bad kid," or they'll sift based on functionality. They'll say, "Oh, that kid, that kid does well in school," right? Or "That kid doesn't do well in school," which really is a way to assess how well do they navigate this educational system that we're placing them in, right?
Okay.
And then the other one, which I think is the most just audacious and sometimes disrespectful, is we'll use the educational system to dictate futures, right? And so we'll say things like, "Hey, that kid's going to go far," right? Or "That kid's not going to do too well." And so I just see all those things as structural violence, because what we're doing is we are, one, dehumanizing our youth. We're not taking an asset-based approach to their being and to who they are. I'm a Christian, and so my belief is that when I was born and when those youth were born, that God placed in them light, value, and a purpose. And so I kind of see any system that tries to dim that light, any system that tries to devalue those youth, or any system that tries to dictate or tear away at that purpose as an oppressive system that's not only oppressive in education, I think it's oppressive as far as humanity is concerned. And so my work is to tear down those moments of oppression and to kind of mitigate that risk for further structural violence against those youth. So yes, I have to see myself in them. I have to see them as fully human. And so because I saw myself in them, I wanted to center my practice and my approach to serving them in their humanity and the value that they brought to the table. I think a lot of the language that we use for education is one about leading. So we lead kids to the light, or we give kids. And I think that language sometimes what it does is it's birthed in this value assessment where I have the value, okay, and then I relinquish it to the child, right? And I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think what we should be is we should be in solidarity with the child. I typically tell people you need to be more Professor X, where it's not like you didn't give them the special powers, you didn't give them their superpowers, but you're along to support them in their development of how they use their superpowers, right? They had the superpowers when they met you. But your job is to say, how can I serve them and stand in solidarity with them so that they can develop those tools and honestly be what they were called to be in the world. It's ways that we mitigate risk from structural violence is really about building the capacity of those that are in systems like the educational system, in the nonprofit system. And we do that through coaching, counseling, and being a consultant, but we also do that through trainings and capacity building. One of the things that excited me so much about being on this talk with you and being in your space is that, in your email, I saw the tagline, literacy is liberation. And that was a tagline that we used at the school that I just left, DRW College Prep, as the inspiration for a program that we did to serve that community. That school is in the North Lawndale community. And if you know anything about North Lawndale, you know that North Lawndale community was deeply impacted by the riots of 1968. King was killed on November 4th, 1968. And one of the reasons it was deeply impacted is because King actually lived in Chicago. He lived on 16th and Hamlin, and he was called there by some freedom workers who were fighting oppression concerning housing discrimination. And the way that many of those oppressive forces were getting over on people and stealing their homes and land and pushing them out of their homes was through illiteracy. Chicago now is considered one of the highest functionally illiterate spaces in America. And so North Lawndale had a history of its community being taken advantage of because of the inability to read and read well. And so what we did was we kind of shifted the way we did school and we did scheduling. We based all students' schedules on their lexile scores. We would do lexile testing at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end. And we had an audacious goal. Our strategic plan was that we wanted every student in our school to grow by 2 grade levels in their lexile score. And to give you an understanding of what that means, we were getting freshmen on average who were coming into school with a 4th to 6th grade lexile score, okay, right? We had some seniors who are juniors who would transfer in that had 5th grade lexile scores. And so what we did was we based everything on our lexile score. We then said, okay, well, we have to have opportunities for the kids to read. So in the middle of our day, we would break the school day schedule up, and there would be an uninterrupted 25-minute piece of time where everyone in the building was reading. That was called our DRW Reads time.
What did you read?
Well, we actually took donations and we built a library in the school so every kid could check out books, and we structured the library based on lexile scores. And so kids would come in and get books that were in their lexile score, and as they developed their reading, they would move up and have to get books that fit their lexile score. So we had some kids that grew 5, 6 grade levels. And on average, we grew the entire school a grade and a half per year that we were doing our DRW Reads program. And I was empowered because I transitioned out and had the blessing to be able to support the sister that was my assistant dean to be dean. And the principal is transitioning out because she's now the chief equity officer of that network. And when we were having our transitions and they were talking about like, what are the non-negotiables that we will not be okay with our next principal, he has to know or she has to know we will not allow those things to be taken away. And I was almost empowered to tears when I heard them say, the first and foremost, we cannot get rid of DRW reads in our Literacy is Liberation program. And so it became a part that's deeply a part of our culture. So our kids bought in, our kids want to read. I think one of the problems we have as educators is we center our voice and our experiences in the things that we create for youth. And what we found was when you center youth voice and experiences, they become excited about that. So the books that were in our library were books that kids requested, right? So a kid would come and say, hey, can you get a bunch of copies of Becoming, because me and my classmates, we want to read Becoming. So that's what we bought, right? So that's really what it was, centering the kids in things that were familiar to them, that they like to read, that they like to talk about. And there were kids that, for whatever reason, whether it was difficulty, whether they were out of practice, whether they just didn't want to be a part of it, would sometimes be discouraged or not want to be involved. But that peer pressure thing is a major thing, because when you see all of your friends reading their books, enjoying their books, having that conversation, it pushes you to get that extra support. And so we were really happy that we were able to get literacy support and make literacy a central theme of the things we were doing at DRW.
Well, before we close here, I want you to tell me about something that you're involved in and what people call you, Harriet's Shotgun. What's that all about?
That is an aspiration. For me, our ancestor, Harriet Tubman, she is a light for liberation. And so I see her as one of my heroes. And one of the nicknames for Harriet was Moses. Me being named Aaron, I've always been asked to speak. I've always been someone that's been comfortable speaking to large crowds and speaking about liberation. And so when I learned about Harriet being named Moses, they would always talk about that whenever you saw Harriet, you saw a shotgun at her side, right? And so that is my aspiration. My aspiration is to be on the side of liberation. And my aspiration is to be actively engaged and being very direct on how we plan to be liberated and how quickly. It might sound a little weird, but Harriet, what she would do with that shotgun, she would fight wars because she was a veteran as well. But if someone wanted to be a part of the runaway slave, they would be a part of the Underground Railroad, and they wanted to look back or go back, she would let them know, like, you're either going with us or you're going to meet my shotgun. Mm-hmm. Because the fear was if they went back, they would be able to tell details that could inhibit others from being free. And so I call myself Harriet's Shotgun because I want to live to be that. I want to be someone that is very directly an instrument of freedom and liberation. So really, when you see me referred to as Harriet's Shotgun, it's not about what I've already accomplished in my mind. It's an aspiration. It's for me to always, be on the side of liberation. It's also for me to be on the side of Black women, right? And to be a protector and supporter with Black women as well. So that's really what that's about.
Thank you so much, Mr. Terrence Pruitt, for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda.
Thank you for having me.